Hello. Good morning, folks. Welcome to another Wealth Coffee Chat. I can see a few of the early birds already on. That's awesome. Fantastic. Thanks for joining. I can see Tom there. Morning, Tom. Good to see you, mate. Chris is in the house as well. Luke, Alison, a few of the regulars, which is awesome. Welcome back, folks. Good to see you. I hope you're well. I'll do the quick intros as things are warming up. If you didn't already know, that's my name. Most of you know that, though. But if you're new or if you're a first-time listener, then give us a shout-out. Say hello in the chat. Thanks for dropping by. You might be watching the replay. You might be watching it live. Fantastic to have you here. What do we do? What do we do on this little chit-chat, a Wealth Coffee Chat in the mornings at about 10 past 8 each weekday? Well, we try and dive into some data, some facts, some info when it comes to the property investing world. And folks, you know that the media loves to feed us fear and ignorance. However, smart investors take their time, listen to the right people, and find out some facts. Cross-check them. Not one source of fact is absolutely accurate, but if you get 3 or 4 different sources all pointing in the same direction, then folks, often there's something in that. So that's what we do here on the show each morning. So welcome along. Good to see you. We've got Victoria popping by as well. We've got Tim. Morning, mate. Good to see you. Hey, listen, what happened yesterday, folks? Other than the race that stopped the nation, what else happened yesterday? Put it in the chat. Big story yesterday. Well, big for some. A little bit of a pain in the pocket, that's for sure. But never fear. Don't you worry. There is benefit on the other side of this. The RBA, in their infinite glory, is trying to slow inflation down and whack the cash rate up a little. Now, 0.25, not going to end the world for you and me. Certainly a bit of a kick in the guts for, your regular homeowner. But for us as property investors, we talked about this yesterday. What's our ability to manage and navigate this, over time is our ability is to, have our rents go up as well. This number here, this is one of those bits of data, some facts that we've gathered over the last couple of weeks that's saying, folks, that the rents, and we all know this anyway, we've been chatting, we've been talking about things that have been happening out there in the marketplace, haven't we? and the idea that the rents aren't going to sit around and stay flat. Let's whack this up here. The idea that over the next 3 to 5 years, a predicted rent rise of 30% or more, folks, on top of what we've already had, seems crazy, but it's absolutely inevitable. And I'm going to bring a guest on in a minute, Cass Shosted, our resident expert in the world of property management. We're going to have a look at this apartment vacancy and rent outlook. So I've got a little special video these days. I've got something now. This is our 6-star team video. I've got to find it. Hang on 2 seconds. Here we go. I'll bring Cass on after this one. Don't go away. Here we go. Look at this. How fancy is that, mate? Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Wealth Coffee Chats.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. Thank you. There you go. No,
good to be here, mate. Yeah, crazy day yesterday. You know, everyone had a flutter at the horses, but the interest rates went up. The cash rate went up. I'm sure we'll all get that soon. But you and I have been talking about this 30% interest, 30% rent rises, folks, in the next little bit. Cass, you know, what's your thoughts here, mate? You know, you work with over 1,500 property managements across Australia and New Zealand.
Yep.
You know, what do you see?
I think it just, Jace, first and foremost, solidifies what activity we've been seeing out on the ground, regardless of location. So, you know, I guess we look at it today and go, all right, 2022 was quite a pretty significant rise for, you know, markets in Sydney and Brisbane. And now we're seeing Melbourne and Perth obviously just continue to tighten as well. And
because Melbourne was behind the 8 ball because it's sort of, you know, the COVID lockdown was longer, right?
About the COVID lockdown. So it was about a 9-month lag. And I guess, you know, you and I spoke about it heaps of times, and we knew it was sort of coming. And now we're seeing that, right? Demand's coming up. We're getting more people through open homes than ever before, which obviously converts to applications and competition. And therefore, you know, along with everything else, you get more rent growth, which is great. Yeah.
Well, mate, you know, there's a bit of an outlook here. You know, like I said in the beginning, and you and I talk about this all the time. You know, there's different sources of information. This is a source from CBR Research, and you know, they do a good job around the country. They've got a lot of data as well. So let's have a bit of a look at this one, folks. And Cass has got a few tips for us and have a bit of a chat. But really, at the end of the day, let's have a look at this. Like the rent outlook, here's something that's pretty interesting. You know, CBRE and Cass, you and I have seen this type of stuff, you know, in multiple sources. But today, you know, CBRE expects median rents to grow by $120 a week, you know, 26% across 53 precincts, you know, Sydney, Parramatta, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth City. You know, what are you seeing on the ground in that sort of respect? How do you feel about this prediction or idea?
Yeah. I think I said to you before, I was like, I read this report the first time and I went, cool. And then I read it again, and I guess it blew my mind again. Like you said, we're talking 30% on top of what we've already had over the past.
Which has been what, a good sort of another 30-40% anyway, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we're seeing on the ground rental increases anywhere from, you know, $50 to $150 a week. So it's quite a significant amount of gross annual income into our clients' pocket each year that we've seen over the past 12-18 months. And to me, you know, you read this and you go, it makes sense. I don't see it any other way that over the next 5 years that, you know, and I think there's a slide as well that will show vacancy continue to tighten further across all capital cities, which is just
I mean, this vacancy rate, talk to us a little bit about that, the vacancy rate. You know, not all properties are made equal, and Tim just dropped a little message in there, sort of, you know, that on one of his property, he, you know, had to, you know, drop the rent to get it done. Now it's not. This is a conversation. You know, you and I have this all the time. It's not every property everywhere. There's certain properties that are just in demand or maybe getting more attention. Like, talk us through that vacancy rate. This is kind of everywhere. But some areas have got, you know, lots available, and some areas have got sort of basically none, right? So talk to us a little bit about that and the vacancy rate here.
Yeah, I think what we see on the ground, Jose, is like, each suburb is unique on its own, and there'll be some suburbs where perhaps there's maybe higher density, right? So there might be more apartments in that particular suburb as opposed to 10Ks from the CBD, where maybe it's more houses and family orientated areas as opposed to the inner city, professional couple, let's say, in terms of demographic or students. So yeah, there can be some fluctuations in that space. But I think what I've seen in particularly yesterday, we're looking at South Bank down in Melbourne. So you could consider that high density area. The vacancy rates are still relatively low. We're not talking 6, 7, 8% with what Melbourne might have seen through COVID. So it's all relative. So I feel, it's right. There's properties in certain locations and certain suburbs that might outperform others. But I think overall, we're seeing a higher percentage of properties go up and maximizing their rent as opposed to, the other way around.
The other way around. Are you seeing? Are you guys seeing any? So more house sharing or apartment sharing or property sharing? Are you seeing cost of living kicking in? I mean, depending on who you are and what you're doing. Yeah.
It's probably a little bit of that. I think, especially if you're around universities and things like that, if you're talking student marketplaces, probably see that more in the inner city ring, I would say, when you've got, the housemate situation as opposed to the family orientated areas. What I would say is that, we try to deliver a product and a campaign to the market that meets the tenant's demand today, because I think the demand of the tenant today is maybe different to what it was 5-10 years ago. So in terms of cost of living that you referenced, for example, property with solar, people were just jumping at it because like, that makes sense to me. I don't have to pay electricity, and that's a bit of, a couple $100 I don't have to pay. So little things like that, we're finding are going a long way to getting a pretty good outcome.
Yeah. Okay. And then, really at the end of the day, this
triple boost.
idea, the idea that, yes, the cost of living is certainly putting pressure on, the average Aussie. I mean, every bloody Aussie, no matter how you slice it or dice it, population going up, plenty of jobs around, earnings, increasing a little. But where do you see, the idea of, higher rents attached to, higher earning, individuals or couples or whatever? Like, give everyone a bit of a thought on that, like where you see that happening.
Yeah, I think it starts I think we see it start in maybe the inner ring to middle ring kind of scenario. And I think a lot of those areas would be...
We call that the Goldilocks zone,
Goldilocks
not
zone,
too close to the city and not too far away from the city.
That's right. Yeah, and I think if you went into those areas as well, you would probably find that they've got great infrastructure, good schools, transport, like all the, the foundations we talk about on this show and others. And generally speaking, if you've got properties in those areas and you present it well, right, so you've got to maintain it as well. You can't just rely on external influences. But I think, if you're in that spot where everything makes sense in terms of its infrastructure and what you're surrounded by, to me, that's where we're talking to people, meeting prospective tenants today that generally have that certain income, let's call it, that is able to, pay the rent of 2023 and even looking at 2024 based on this sort of data here from CBRE to know that, okay, if we do increase the rent 10%, that they've got some capacity in that, in their income, in their household income to sustain it, I suppose. Yeah.
And again, horses for courses, there might be, a 2-week period where it is a bit lower and, someone doesn't want to leave their property vacant for a while. You and I have talked about this a lot, actually, holding out for, let's say, for example, Tim here saying, okay, I had it on at 710. But if he held out for 2 weeks to get 710, but could have taken 695, the net result for the year might be the same or better. But this is kind of the game, you play as a property owner and maybe a property manager. But, talk a little bit about that. And I'm going to ask you for a quick sort of five quick fire tips in a minute. But, how does that work?
I think it's just understanding the cost of changing a tenant, right? So sometimes, like you said, we get stuck on a figure. I want 710, and that's just the way it's going to be for no real sort of reason. And like you said, maybe 680, 690 is out there in the marketplace, and $20 a week. It's not a lot, right? It's $1,000 a year. Like you said, 2 weeks vacant, you're actually worse off. So I think you've got to be quite proactive and understand the numbers from a net perspective first and foremost, because but also on the flip side, okay, we can say, yeah, for the investor there's a change of cost in tenancy, we understand that, but there's also a change in cost for tenants. So we're actually not really seeing tenants want to vacate for the sake of vacating, whereas in the past that might have been the case. So I think if you understand the cost of transaction to change, and the reason or the purpose behind it, but then also if you've got the ability to negotiate with your tenant, you're going to be in a better situation and position, because this data is saying that over the next 5 years, the massive win is right in front of your face. So it's kind of like definitely need to understand it now, because if we don't, then you feel like you're going to be missing out huge.
Well, talk to us about, give us 3 to 5 tips from your point of view as a property manager, how to manage this effectively over the next 3 to 5 years. What would you do? What would you tell folks listening in?
So the first thing I do is go and check with your coach or your broker. And I feel like a lot of feedback or a lot of conversation I'm hearing from a lot of our clients, and internal and external, is that they might have some lazy equity lying around that they actually don't even know about. And funny enough, I was kind of in that position myself about a month ago. So I just found out I could do something I didn't probably realize I could do 6 weeks ago. So I think that's the first thing, because what I would do with that, if give you an example, yesterday a client's actually just unfortunately renewed a lease for 2 years. Right, 2025, no increase. He's already behind the market, so a bit of a challenge there, right? Not ideal. So okay, the lease is fixed. We understand that. What could he do now? Now, if he had some equity lying around, could he renovate the property? Could he upgrade? Maybe it's just cosmetic items, but maybe it's a full upgrade of a kitchen or whatnot, to put themselves in a position in 12, 18 months' time to then reap the rewards of that. So I think it's like, do I have some equity, and then what can I do with it? And I know you know all about that, Jace, about renoing and things like that. So I think that's a healthy conversation or something to identify, especially where we are today. I think what I would do as well,
because like that, maybe you don't get it now, but you can claw it back later and add
some
value.
And we know we can only increase rents once a year, and a fixed lease is exactly what that is, a fixed lease. And unless the tenant's breaking it and moving on, we're sort of in that zone of that red figure. I'd look at expenses as well. Like, just do a review. I think there's some unnecessary spending going on as well. So I know we talk a lot about the income a lot with our clients, but I think being quite sensible about what expenses might look like. What I would do, and what I've been doing, I did it yesterday with one of our clients, was you need to meet with a property management coach. Like honestly, I can't encourage this enough, especially with the data we're seeing over the next 5 years. If the opportunity is that large, it's right in front of us. You need to meet with your property management coach. You need to understand where you are today. And yes, maybe there are some instances we can't fix it today, but you need to make sure you fix it over the next 12 to 18 months in particular.
And have a bit of a plan, right? I mean,
and have a plan.
It's like you talk to me all the time, like, I hear from the owner sort of maybe once a year in these moments where there's a bit of stress and pressure when the lease is renewing. But if we chatted multi times a year and had a bit of a plan and a strategy, the stress and the income would be better.
So to give you, for that example I used about the 2-year lease of 2025. So, $50 under rented as it is, right? So call it $3,000 missed opportunity for the first year. Even if we didn't get any rent increase in 2024, there's another $3,000. So he's already $6,000 behind where he needs to be. Not ideal. If we were able to get into that, have that conversation 6 weeks ago and get in earlier than the other party, this wouldn't have been a problem, right? We wouldn't have done a 2-year lease. We wouldn't have done what has eventuated. I think as well, you just need to, like you said, have a plan. But if you're stuck, I think your property manager has 2 jobs. It's keep you safe, make you wealthy. And if they're not doing that, you need to move.
Yeah, you did right. Because it's like if you boil it down, that's what their job is, right? Like, make sure. Yeah.
We understand. There's some detail to it, but Dad said that's what's going on in the marketplace at the moment. And for me, I'm talking to clients who are with us, some other, maybe in different locations or whatnot, and it's funny. 12 years in this industry, you're hearing the same feedback, the same situations, the same challenges come up. So I guess what I'd say to everyone is like, look, there's a solution to this. So yeah, if you don't feel safe and you don't feel they're making you wealthy, and you're looking at this data thinking, geez, the next 5 years looks pretty good, then just change. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, get the right one. And both you and I know that the proactivity on property management is something that you've got to get on top of, rather than being reactive as an owner and taking care of your
just going pro with it, right? Just being a pro and taking it to the next level. Yep.
Yeah, dead right, mate. Dead right. Well, listen, I think we could yak all day, mate. I certainly would. I certainly know that that'd be worth doing. Let me try and get us in the centre here. There we go. But we don't have all day. But Cass, how can people get hold of you? Luke was just sort of saying, hey, can I get some feedback on a property he's got?
I can punch my number and maybe email in the chat if I can get that in there.
Drop your email in the chat. That'd be awesome. And Cass, Luke's part of the mentoring group team crew as well. So Luke, you could at Cass Shosted in the positive mentoring
in the Facebook group
as well. Yep.
No drama.
Away we go. Mate, great to have you here today. Thank you for joining me. Always thanks, good to chat with you. And also, thanks for joining us, folks, as always. Great to have you here with us today as well. I think that's we're over a little bit today, but I think it was worth the chat. So takeaways: if you've got some equity, renovate now or into the future, because you're going to maximize that return on that cash. Like review the expenses. Don't take every increase of expense across the board. Without having a little look, you might be able to save yourself a bit of dollars here and there, which is certainly a dollar saved is certainly a dollar you don't have to make. Catch up with your PM and make sure that they're coaching you on, the plan that you have to really, at the end of the day, become wealthy from your property and keep you safe. Good tips, Cass. All right, folks, that's it from us. As always, thanks for joining. Join me tomorrow if you're up for it for another one. Until then, folks, you guys take care. The drill: buy well, don't sell. And make sure you reach out to the right people. That's it from us. Adios, folks. Thanks for joining. Bye for now. See you, Cass.